Hello, this is a video on how to play the card game Miss Milligan. Miss Milligan is a solitaire card game that's played with two standard 52 card decks. Like with many other solitaire card games, the objective is to build 8 foundation piles up from ace to king. In terms of setting the game up, you'll deal one card face up to 8 tableau piles, right? And then after dealing these cards to the tableau, the remaining cards are set aside, forming a stockpile. You'll also leave room for 8 empty foundation piles, as well as 1 empty reserve pile. So in terms of setting the game up, it's pretty easy to set up. Probably one of the easiest solitaires to set up out of all of them, right? You just need to deal your 8 cards to your 8 tableau piles and set aside the remaining cards in a stock pile. On the tableau, cards are played in descending order, alternate colors. That means a card must be one rank lower and of the opposite color than the card you are placing it on. This 10 of spades is one rank lower and is of the black color, while the jack is one rank higher and is of the red color. Therefore, they are one rank apart, alternate colors, so we can place them like so. If you have a group of cards in a sequence, you can move that entire pile. This jack and 10 are in sequence, and so we can move the entire pile. If they aren't in sequence, then you can only move the top card on the pile. An empty pile can only be filled with a king or a sequence starting with a king. You can draw from the stockpile anytime. That deals one card to each tableau pile, and so this is a different solitaire. It's unique in that aspect. We don't have a waste pile, and so if you do want to deal, be careful because you will change the top card for each tableau pile. Now, if you empty the stock, you can move a singular card or a sequence of cards to the reserve pile. The reserve pile can hold a singular card or a single sequence of cards. Now, if it's holding a sequence of cards, right? I mean, what you put in the reserve pile, it must be taken out in the same way, okay? Now, if you put a singular card in the reserve pile, you'll take a single card out. That makes sense, and that's not too hard to understand. But if you put a sequence in the reserve pile, now we can't do it right now because we still have our stockpile. But once we run out of the stockpile, we'll be able to also put a sequence in the reserve pile. If you put a sequence in the reserve pile, you put a sequence in, you can only take that sequence out. You have to, if you put a sequence of 5 cards in, you must take that entire sequence of 5 cards out. Whatever you put in must be moved out the same way in the reserve pile. So here, even though we made a sequence, we are allowed to move a singular card. Right? So we have a sequence, but we're not forced to move the entire sequence. But if we place a sequence in the reserve pile, you don't have the liberty, right? And so if you place a sequence in the reserve pile, you don't have the liberty of moving a singular card individually if you would like. You must move the entire sequence. So let's say the sequence was in here. We would have to grab the cards by the jack and move the entire sequence where we wanted to. So that's pretty much it, right? You win the game if you move all the cards into the foundation piles. You lose the game if you run out of moves and there are still cards left over. Let us sum up the rules one more time. On the tableau, cards are played in descending order, alternate colors. The top card can be moved from the tableau pile, or a sequence of cards can be moved from the tableau pile. An empty pile can only be filled with a king or a sequence of cards starting with a king. You can draw from the stockpile anytime. That draws one card to each of the tableau piles. And our fourth and last rule is that once the stock is empty, the reserve pile can hold one card or a sequence of cards. What you put in the reserve pile is what you must take out. If you put in a sequence of 5 cards, you must move that entire sequence of 5 cards whenever you are planning to make a move with the reserve pile. So those are the 4 rules. Hopefully it was not too complicated and I did a good job of explaining them. Let us begin demonstration round. We have our ace of clubs here. We'll go ahead and play it like so. There's no other move that can be made here. So we'll draw from the stockpile. We have an ace of spades. We'll go ahead and play that as well as our 2 of spades. So that's good for us. We don't have our 3 of spades. We do have some beneficial cards here though. Namely being our 3 of hearts here. And our 5 of diamonds. We also have our 2 of hearts, but unfortunately we can't move that as part of any sequence here. So we are stuck in that regard. We can't make any more moves. Let us draw from the stockpile again. Right, and so you are under the mercy of your draw, right? If you get a bad stockpile draw, well then it could mess up your game a lot, right? Or if you have to keep drawing again and again, that's not a position anybody really wants to be in. We don't have any moves that can be made here again, unfortunately, so we must draw again. Now, we have another ace. We'll go ahead and we'll play our 2. We have a jack, but it's not really beneficial. Unfortunately, we can't make any moves again. So we'll draw again. And you might be in a position like this, and if you have to keep drawing, it is usually a guaranteed loss, unfortunately, because you are simply exhausting so much of your stockpile, right? And you can only go through your stockpile once, and so if you exhaust it early on, it's quite hard to make a comeback. Luckily for us, we're sort of making some sort of leeway. Unfortunately, we can't move that 6 or do anything with it. And so we'll once again draw again. Now we got our ace of diamonds, so that's beautiful. We'll go ahead and we'll order the cards in a manner that would be sort of beneficial to us. I don't know if any of these would honestly be beneficial ordering. We'll go ahead and we'll move that back on the queen pile though. That frees up that 8. We still can't make too many moves here, unfortunately. So we're still a bit stuck and limited in our possibilities, right? And so once again, we'll have to draw here. So this could happen a lot. You might be in a position where you have to keep drawing again and again, unable to really make something happen. We'll go ahead and we'll move that entire sequence there. That provides us with what we need. Okay. We also want that 3 of diamonds under there. But I don't know if we'll be able to get to it, unfortunately. So no, we won't really be able to get to it. Yeah, there's nothing we could do there. So once again, we'll have to draw. So our draws, we're getting a bit lucky in that we are getting cards that are somewhat beneficial. But I want that 3 of diamonds, and to do so, we'll need a black 5 of hearts, and we'll move that on the red 6. Okay, so let's watch the sequence of moves. It's very, very coordinated. But that didn't work out anyway because we don't have an 8. So that was actually uncoordinated, my apologies. If we can move this 7, then we could sort of make a move to rescue. To rescue that 3 of diamonds there. What about the 4 of spades? Can we rescue that? Nope. And the ace of, sorry, the 2 of clubs. cannot be rescued either. And so in terms of a gameplay demonstration, that's pretty much it, right? We do have 2 standard 52 card decks, so it would be time consuming for me to go through all 104 cards and make a play with all of them. And we're most likely probably going to lose anyway, even if we did try doing that. Simply because we aren't the best solitaire players, but that's okay. Let us go through the rules just one last time to sum them up, right? So you will need your 2 standard 52 card decks, building up all 8 foundations from ace to king. When you're first setting up, you deal 1 card face up to each tableau pile, right? And you'll have 8 tableau piles. After dealing the cards to the tableau, the remaining cards are set aside, forming a stockpile. You'll have 8 empty foundation piles, as well as 1 empty reserve pile. In terms of playing the game, on the tableau, cards are played on descending order in alternate colors. And so this 5 is 1 rank lower than the 6. The 5 is red, the 6 is black. We can go ahead and place them like so. Okay, we wouldn't be able to place the 6 on the 7 because even though the 6 is 1 rank lower, it's not the opposite color, right? It's black, and the 7 is also black as well. What else is there to go over? Well, the top card can be moved from a tableau pile, or if you have a group of cards in sequence, you can move them as well. Right, so you can move the top card or a sequence if you have a group of cards in sequence. An empty pile in the tableau can only be filled with a king or a group of cards starting with a king. Unless, of course, you draw, in which case whatever card you draw would go ahead and fill the empty tableau pile. Note that you can draw from the stockpile anytime you would like. What you'll have to do is you'll deal 1 card to each tableau pile. Okay, and so be mindful of that, right? You can mess up your ordering and your current sequence if you draw too liberally without thinking. Now, you have a reserve pile here that's empty. And so you'll use this reserve pile once you exhaust your stockpile, right? And so once you exhaust your stockpile, you're allowed to use your reserve pile. The reserve pile can hold either 1 card or a sequence of cards. So a single card or a single sequence of cards. Note that whatever you put in the reserve pile, it must leave the reserve pile in the exact same way. So if you place a card in the reserve pile and you want it, or a group of cards in the reserve pile, and you want to take them out, they must leave the exact same way you put them in. So if you put in a sequence of 5, you can only remove that sequence of 5. If you put in a sequence of 10, you must remove that sequence of 10 when you're making a play with the cards. You cannot put in a sequence of 5 and then lift the top card off the pile. It's not another tableau pile. Don't treat it as such. It is a reserve pile. Thus, if you place a card in the reserve pile, you must, or a group of cards in the reserve pile, you must take them out in the same way that you placed them in the reserve pile. That's pretty much it in terms of the rules, right? The game itself is sort of hard, in my opinion at least, and you'll win if you move all the cards to the foundation piles. You'll lose if you run out of moves or are in a bit of a, I guess, I guess you're in a bit of an endless cycle of making the same move over and over again, and you still have cards left, right? And so that wraps up how to play Miss Milligan. This game is easy to set up, but I will have to admit it's not one of my favorite solitaires, simply because it has a large degree of uncertainty when you're drawing from the tableau. And the more uncertainty there is, the harder the game is generally to win. One more thing about the reserve pile is that it's probably your most important pile in Miss Milligan. Okay, like the game itself is already hard to win, but the players who have the greatest success, and this has been, I guess, sort of observed over time, is the players who are able to make the best use of their reserve pile. Right, this completely changes the game. Right, you're able to effectively, if you don't like a card or a group of cards, you can move it out of the way. But be prepared, because when you want to play it back in, you have to play it back in using the entire group, right? So essentially, if you move cards in the reserve pile, it must be empty. To move when you're moving cards out of the reserve pile, it will also make the reserve pile empty. So this was a bit of a longer video, but I hope you learned how to play Miss Milligan. And thank you for watching.